So I tell people every morning, wake up, thank God for the new day, then turn to your angel and say, I appreciate your help today. And these are the things I struggle with. These are the appointments today I think are going to be difficult, the meetings I have. Can you be there and intercede for me through these things? You'd be surprised how different your day goes. And if you surrender to the day and not push for getting things your way, because we frequently think, I have to have it this way. But then if you let it go and see what God's going to do, if you've given him permission over the day, he will wrap it up in a way so much more clean, neat, and tidy than you could ever imagine that you could do.
My brothers and sisters, have you ever noticed how some mornings feel heavy before you even rise, as if something unseen has already crossed the threshold of your day? Many carry that weight, quietly assuming it is stress or routine. But years in spiritual warfare have shown me that the struggle often begins long before you take your first step. There is a grace God intends for you at dawn, a grace that steadies the mind and guards the heart. And beside you stands a heavenly guardian who has watched over your soul since the beginning, yet so few ever learn how to let him act. What we explore today will take you into the hidden movements of grace, the subtle tactics of darkness, and the one habit capable of reshaping the entire rhythm of your day. What unfolds here may change how you enter every morning that follows. After years serving as an exorcist, I've seen one truth again and again. Most Catholics believe in their guardian angel, but very few live as if heaven has assigned them a companion who thinks, who acts, who protects, who warns. And even fewer understand how much grace is lost each day simply because they never speak to the one sent to guide them. In deliverance work, I often watch people fight battles they were never meant to face alone. They struggle in confusion, fear, discouragement, forgetting that God has already placed a heavenly intelligence at their side. Psalm 91 tells us the Lord commands his angels to guard us in all our ways. Not some of our ways, all. Yet grace never forces itself upon the human heart. Heaven waits for permission. The angels respect the dignity God has placed in your free will. They will not break into your day. They wait to be invited into it. Here is the mystery most people never consider. When you wake without acknowledging your guardian angel, you enter the day with only human sight. You walk into conversations unaware of the spiritual currents beneath them. You face temptation without the illumination that was meant to go before you like a shield. I have watched hearts awaken the moment this truth becomes real. When someone finally recognizes that the angel at their side is not symbolic or poetic, but utterly real, everything shifts. The day no longer feels random. The burdens no longer feel solitary. And the attacks of the enemy no longer arrive unchallenged. This is why we must go deeper today. Because once you understand what the angels are truly commissioned to do, you will never begin your morning the same way again. There is a reason the enemy pushes hardest before your day even begins. Darkness knows that if it can shape the first movements of your heart, it can distort everything that follows. Most spiritual collapses I've witnessed do not begin with grave temptation. They start with a quiet vulnerability in the first minutes of morning. When you rise without anchoring your spirit, you step into a world already in motion, pressures, memories, fears, unfinished conversations. And the enemy whispers into that fog. Not with dramatic assaults, but with subtle distortions. This will be another exhausting day. You are already behind. No one will understand you today. These are not random thoughts. They are early attempts to bend your inner world before grace has its say. Revelation 3:20 tells us the Lord stands at the door and knocks. But the enemy also waits at the threshold, hoping you will open the wrong door first. Many do not out of malice, but out of habit, rushing into the day without claiming the light meant to go before them. I have seen souls spend months, even years, under a quiet oppression simply because their mornings were unguarded. They prayed later, yes, but by then the ground of the heart had already been tilted. Their choices, reactions, patience, and even their peace
were shaped by a spiritual draft that slipped in at dawn.
This is why the morning matters so deeply. Not because God is absent later, but because the foundation of your inner world is poured when your eyes first open. And if you do not claim that moment, something else will. There comes a moment when you must decide whether your mornings will be shaped by fear or by grace. And for many people, the struggle you face at dawn is not a lack of faith, it's a lack of permission. Heaven waits for a word from you that never comes. The angel assigned to guard your steps stands ready, but you begin the day carrying a weight you were never meant to lift alone. Here's the truth: most Catholics never hear a single deliberate act in the first moments of the morning can change the spiritual trajectory of your entire day. Not because the words are magical, but because your heart finally turns toward the ally God has given you.
The habit is simple, but its power is profound. When you open your eyes before the noise of the world reaches you, speak to God with gratitude for the day. Then speak directly to your guardian angel. Tell him the places where, you are weak, the conversations that may be difficult, the temptations that often return. Tell him the moments you fear, the wounds that still ache, the patterns that keep tripping you. And then ask him to walk ahead of you.
This is not a poetic gesture. It is spiritual strategy.
You shift from being reactive to being guided. You stop stumbling into the unseen battles described earlier and begin your day with light moving before you instead of chasing behind you. You begin to sense clarity where confusion once lived. You begin to notice peace where agitation used to rise. And most importantly, you stop facing temptation alone. I have seen this habit break cycles of discouragement that therapy, resolutions, and sheer willpower could not touch. I have watched people who felt perpetually overwhelmed suddenly navigate their days with a calm they could not explain. And every time the change began the same way, by surrendering the morning and inviting their angel to act.
This is where the enemy grows uneasy because darkness depends on your isolation. The moment you call upon the one sent to guard you, the balance shifts. What once pressed heavily on your spirit becomes something you can finally recognize and reject. What once controlled you loses power when divine help is allowed to enter the room first.
You were never meant to walk into the day unprotected. And once you claim this habit, you will begin to see what has been happening in the unseen world all along. When you begin this simple morning habit, something shifts in a realm you cannot see. Not with trauma, not with spectacle, but with a quiet reordering of the spiritual landscape around you. Grace moves with purpose, and the darkness that once slipped easily into your thoughts finds the path far more narrow than before. Your guardian angel, who once waited in silence, now receives a commission from your own lips. And heaven responds to that invitation with clarity. I have seen it time and again. The atmosphere around a person changes, sometimes subtly, sometimes with unmistakable force, when they finally allow the angel to do what God created him to do.
You may notice it first in your mind. A thought that once spiraled into anxiety suddenly loses its grip. A familiar temptation feels strangely weaker, as if someone stepped between you and the blow. An old resentment begins to loosen its hold, not because the memory vanished, but because grace illuminated a different way to see it.
These are not coincidences. They are the first signs that light has entered the room before you did. Scripture tells us in 1 Corinthians 14:33 that God is not the author of confusion. And when you invite your angel into the day, confusion begins to lose its authority. You start to sense a gentle alignment inside your soul, a steadiness that wasn't there before. Decisions become clearer. Your reactions slow down just enough for grace to speak. The noise of the enemy grows faint.
In deliverance ministry, I have witnessed this transformation with striking consistency. The moment a person begins surrendering their morning, the enemy's timing falters. What once struck with precision, discouragement, irritation, fear, now arrives late weakened or not at all. It is as though the darkness miscalculates, unable to find its mark, because an angel now stands in the space where vulnerability used to be.
This shift is invisible to the human eye, but unmistakable to the soul. And it prepares you for something even more important, recognizing how your angel speaks to you throughout the day. If there is one pain nearly every soul carries, it is the feeling of walking through life without clear direction. You try to do what is right. Yeah. So often, you wonder, why didn't I sense this sooner? Why didn't I see the danger before it arrived? What you may not realize is that heaven has been whispering to you far longer than you've been listening. Your guardian angel rarely speaks in ways that overwhelm. His warnings come as subtleties, quiet movements of clarity meant to reach you before confusion settles in. And once you begin the morning habit we spoke of earlier, these movements become unmistakably more frequent.
You may feel a sudden pause before saying something sharp. You may hesitate before entering a conversation that usually spirals into conflict. You may notice a gentle, inward tug urging you to step away from a temptation that once gripped you without resistance. These are not random instincts. They are the language of an angel who knows the path ahead of you more clearly than you do.
Scripture tells us in John 14:26 that the Helper reminds you of all that Christ has said. That reminder often arrives as a soft but persistent nudge, a sense that a certain choice carries weight or that a particular moment requires restraint. The angel is not controlling you. He is illuminating the road so your freedom can flourish within God's will. I have seen this play out countless times in spiritual direction. A person who once rushed headlong into the same mistakes begins to feel an interior caution they cannot explain. Someone who once dismissed their conscience now hears its whisper with new sharpness. The angel's hand has not suddenly grown stronger. Your awareness has finally awakened.
But there's a reason these silent warnings matter so deeply. They are not only meant to guide you, they are meant to shield you from the tactics that darkness will attempt when it realizes you are becoming more spiritually alert. And when that happens, opposition often shifts. Whenever you begin responding to the gentle warnings of your angel, something shifts, not only in heaven, but in the realm of darkness as well. Evil does not remain passive when a soul starts waking up. And if you have ever wondered why spiritual progress is so often followed by sudden pressure, unexpected conflict, or strange discouragement, there is a reason for it.
Darkness studies your habits. It observes the patterns you fall into, the conversations that unravel your peace, the moments where you are weakest. It cannot read your mind, but it watches your reactions with precision. And when you begin to rely on grace instead of impulse, when you start recognizing the subtle cautions of your angel, the enemy realizes it must recalibrate. This is why, for many people, the first signs of spiritual growth are not comfort, they're resistance. You may feel a surge of irritation over something trivial. You may encounter tension in relationships that had been calm for months. You may wake with a heaviness that seems out of place or face temptations you thought you had grown past. These are not indications of failure. They are signs that darkness is losing its previous access to your heart. 1 Peter 5:8 tells you to be sober and vigilant because your adversary prowls like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. But lions do not roar to devour. They roar to intimidate, to scatter, to disrupt the confidence of their prey. And the enemy does the same. He tries to unsettle the new alignment in your soul before it strengthens. In the ministry of deliverance, I have seen this counterattack unfold with remarkable consistency. A person begins a life of disciplined prayer, a clearer conscience, a relationship with their guardian angel, and suddenly old triggers return with unusual force. But when you look closely, the patterns reveal something important. The attacks grow louder only because your spirit has grown brighter.
The enemy leans on urgency, impulse, and chaos because he fears what happens when you pause long enough to hear the voice of grace. He fears the moment when the angelic warnings you noticed in part 5 become your new way of navigating the world.
Yet here's the part many people overlook: resistance does not mean you are losing. It often means you are finally standing where you were always meant to stand. And with the right spiritual posture, the very pressure that tries to break you becomes the evidence that heaven is already working on your behalf. What matters now is how you respond. And for that, you need something practical, something stable you can carry into every dawn. There's a quiet fear many people carry but rarely confess. What if I truly want spiritual order, but I don't know how to begin? What if I fail again? After facing the resistance described earlier, you might feel unprepared, unsure, even intimidated by your own desire to change. But the path forward is far simpler than you imagine. You do not need long prayers to anchor your morning. You need clarity. You need intention. And you need a structure that meets you where you actually live, not where you wish you lived. Here is the framework I have taught for years, especially to those who feel overwhelmed by spiritual disorder. When you open your eyes, pause. Do not reach for your phone. Do not replay yesterday's failures. Let your first movement be upward. Make the sign of the cross, not as ritual, but as alignment. It tells heaven you are awake and willing. Then speak a brief word of gratitude to God for the new day. Gratitude shifts the soil of your heart, loosening the grip of anxiety before it has a chance to take hold. After that, entrust the day to your guardian angel. Name what you fear. Name where you tend to fall. Name the difficult conversations, the appointments, the temptations, the fragile places inside you. When you name them, you disarm them. I often tell people, don't hide your weaknesses from your angel. He already sees them. What he waits for is your willingness to let him step into them with you. And something else matters. Consistency is more important than intensity. A quiet 30 seconds offered faithfully carries more spiritual weight than a passionate prayer offered once in a crisis. Discipline builds spiritual authority. It strengthens your interior posture so that the resistance we spoke of earlier cannot destabilize you. You may not feel anything at first. That is normal. The unseen world is not measured by emotion. But with repetition, you will begin to notice that the chaos which used to greet you in the morning arrives late. The temptations that once blindsided you lose their timing. The discouragement that lingered for hours dissolves before it settles. This simple routine becomes a doorway, a structured way for grace to precede you. And as it strengthens, something beautiful begins to emerge, something many people never expect: the fruits of perseverance. When you stay faithful to this simple habit, something begins to unfold that often surprises people. You start noticing that the weight you used to carry each morning no longer settles the same way. What once felt chaotic now feels ordered. What once overwhelmed you now seems strangely manageable. Grace begins shaping the hours ahead before you ever reach them. You may find that conversations that once drained you become calmer, almost guided. Decisions that used to paralyze you suddenly appear clearer. And temptations that once arrived with sharp force begin to lose their urgency. None of this happens by accident. It is the natural fruit of allowing heaven to move before you instead of behind you. Philippians 4:7 tells you that the peace of God will guard your heart and mind. That peace is not abstract. It becomes tangible when you let your angel walk the path first. And slowly, almost quietly, you discover a truth many people never reach. The spiritual order you longed for was never out of reach. It simply waited for perseverance to unlock it. My brothers and sisters, the grace you long for in the early hours is not distant. You were never meant to face the weight of the day alone.
When you surrender your morning and invite your angel to walk before you, the confusion that once claimed your peace begins to lose its ground, and the path ahead becomes steady with light.
Before you leave, offer a simple prayer in the comments, "Lord, guide my steps today." When you write it, you seal your intention before heaven, turning a few words into an act of faith.